Hi Fred, hi Clara, hi Coty, hi Bay, hi Albert. Today, Pops Mountain TV is going to tell you a story from English history. A story about a king who we've called the Loser King. He's a king who lost his kingdom and in the end lost his body. Why do you call him a loser, Paul?
Well, the thing is, he set off with such high hopes. He was the anointed King of England. He had it all in front of him. All his future was there. All he had to do was to keep a low profile, not upset the Protestant hierarchy too much, and he would have been able to carry on.
But where did he go wrong?
He didn't. Well, he didn't. He wanted to reinstate the Catholics, affect the Protestants' power and influence. That upset them, and he was got rid of. He lost everything.
So here we are in Mali, and I brought together Professor Paul, who is the world's leading expert on the Stuart monarchy, and two of his foremost fans, Nonna Lynn and Auntie Debbie, who are going to be listening to his pearls of wisdom. Now, Paul, I understand that you're going to talk to us today about a famous royal family of a dad and two sons.
That's right. We're going to talk about James II of England, whose brother was Charles II of England, whose father had been Charles I, the Stuarts.
Okay. Cool. Could you start with Charles? So he was the dad. What do we know about him?
Well, Charles I was king in the 1600s, and he's best known because he had his head cut off.
But here we have Charles I, and alongside him his younger son, James, who in fact is going to become later in his life James II, and who is the subject of our story. This is a very famous painting by the Dutch painter Anthony van Dyck of Charles I, the dad in our story. And interestingly, the painter painted him in three different positions. There he is, you can see him beautifully painted. Amazing.
Just a reminder, he had his head chopped off.
And he, although he doesn't know it when he's being painted, he's going to have his head chopped off.
So that was not a common occurrence?
No, as far as I'm aware, he's the only English king to actually have his head cut off. This was as a result of a war between his supporters, the king's supporters, and the parliamentarians who didn't want there to be a king.
Excuse me, are these the famous Cavaliers and Roundheads?
The Cavaliers and the Roundheads. The Cavaliers supported the king, the Roundheads supported the parliamentarians.
Excuse me, why were they called Roundheads?
Because they had helmets which were round.
And here are a couple of Roundhead soldiers.
So, who became king next?
There's a slight complication in that for some 20 years after Charles had his head cut off, we didn't have any king. We had what was known as the Commonwealth. But after 20 years, the British people decided that they wanted a king again. So they appointed, they enthroned, they put on the throne Charles I's son, who was called Charles. So he became Charles II.
Oh.
And has there been Charles III since then?
Not yet. Our current Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, has a son called Charles, and when Elizabeth dies, Charles will become king and he will be known as King Charles III.
So there's been no other Charles between, obviously.
Okay, so if you could take us back in time, we've, as you so carefully explained, Charles II is now on the throne, and did he die? Was he
Yes, he
executed?
died. No, he died naturally in 1685, and he didn't have a son. So his brother James became king.
And this is James II when he became king. And he's wearing a long wig.
Maybe.
James, being a Catholic, was unpopular. The nobles, the powerful people in England were very concerned that he might want to reinstate the Catholics, the Pope as leader of the church, and they didn't want that. So ultimately he was got rid of as King of England.
This is a drawing of James II fleeing to France from England on a fishing boat. When he arrived in France, he went to St Germain en Laye, was put up in the chateau, and eventually had his wife and children come over to join him there. Well, hi there. I'm pleased to say that I've now been allowed into the courtyard of the Chateau of St Germain, and as you can see, they have a very nice little chapel in one corner just there behind me. The bell's just rung. And as you can also see, the inside of this chateau is absolutely beautiful. And this is exactly the view that James II and his family would have had when they were staying here. They stayed here for 25 years, up until James's death. And the family, that is him, his wife, his children, they stayed here under the protection of the French king at the time, Louis the something. And Louis looked after them and allowed them to spend many, many years here. Hello, Lynn. Can you just tell us a little bit about what happened to James II when he died?
When he died, his body was split up into 5 different pieces and spread all over the place, all over France. And we're here in St Germain to look at his entrails.
Entrails. What are entrails? Here's a photograph of a lady wearing a swimsuit which gives the impression that you can see her entrails. Entrails are all the bits inside your body. There's here you've got the small intestine, the large intestine, the lungs, the heart, bit of liver. If you were to peel the skin off you or me or James II, that's what you'd find. And that's what they took out of James II. They placed it in a casket, and they placed the casket inside a marble memorial which they put inside the church in St Germain. We're now going to have a look at what it looks like today, 400 years later. There's a church service just starting, so I have to be quite discreet. As you can see, there's quite a lot of people here. And here it is. This is the memorial to James II of England in a small church in St Germain near Paris. You can see, if you look at the centre of the inscription, part of the inscription says Jacobus II Anglorum Rex, which means James II, King of England. Above him you will see patron saint of England, St George, on his horse, slaying a dragon. And on the walls you'll see paintings of the royal emblem of the English crown. Well, as you can hear, the church service has just started, so I think I'd better discreetly leave the church. Hi, Lynn.
Hello.
So, tell me, what does it say on this sign?
Well, this building here was built between 1662 and 1665 by Robert Barclay, and it became a college for the Scots. And inside this college is a bronze urn which contains the brain of James II, who died in St Germain in 1701.
This is a photograph of a human brain. You can see the skull, the head of the person with their nose here. And inside their head, this is what a human brain looks like. It's got lots and lots of little folds in it. It's that sort of fleshy colour. And that's where all our thinking goes on. All our memories in there, different parts, the way we deal with what our eyes see, how we make it into something that we can understand in our head. That's it. And that's the part that they took out of James II, but none of it. So Lynn, where are we?
Well, we are standing here outside the Scuola Cantorum in rather heavy rain, and this used to be the chapel of the English Benedictine nuns.
When was this? How long ago? Hundreds of years?
Oh yeah, 1600s.
Right. And why are we here?
We're here because this is where James II's skeleton was buried.
A skeleton? What does that look like? What does it mean? What's a human skeleton? So there you go. That's a human skeleton. As you can see, if you were to be able to look inside a human, then this is what you'd see. You'd see the bones that hold us together. The arms, the legs, the fingers, the skull. This here is the rib cage. This is the pelvis. That's a human skeleton.
Buried in a triple layer coffin. There were 3 layers, 1 layer which was lead and 2 layers which were wooden.
So
for
that
extra security.
Now, when you say for extra security, there must have been a very important reason why they would go to such trouble to put him inside a lead coffin and then 2 wooden coffins. They obviously wanted his body to be preserved for a long time. Why was that?
Well, because he'd been asked to be buried here when he died. He was still in exile, but he was hoping that one day the Stuarts would come back onto the throne and then he would get his rightful place in Westminster Abbey.
Did that happen?
No, I'm afraid not.
So what happened to the body? What happened to the coffins?
Well, during the French Revolution, I'm afraid the part of this building was burned down and the coffin was exhumed, and nobody knows what happened to the skeleton. It disappeared.
Thank you very much. Well, I hope you enjoyed our story. I just thought I'd give you a quick answer to a question which might occur to you. The question would be, why did they take James's body and split it up between so many people, so many places? The answer to that question is that they believed that James had given up his kingdom for his faith. He was a very strong Catholic, and they therefore believed that he was in some ways like a saint. And they believed that his body had magical powers. So they divided it up so that individual churches, abbeys could have a little piece of that magic, and people could come and pray to the little piece of James to be cured or to get pregnant, whatever it was they wanted. They could go to that particular place and pray for a change in their lives that they wanted. Interestingly, when I was filming in the church of St Germain, a small old lady came up to me and told me that I should remember that this particular shrine was very powerful and that she had seen it cure one of her nieces, a niece who'd been ill. She brought her to this shrine, and in fact this girl had been cured. And this old lady was deadly serious. Religion's a powerful thing. Okay, well, see you next week for another story from Pops Mountain TV.